All right, can you see the screen now?
Word's good, that's fine.
Yes.
But to be encouraging them to the good, to what the Lord said.
All right. I gave an assignment last week, and I'll go back and hit it again and pick it up in just a minute. Let me do that right now. And we will work this assignment next week. What we had is, I asked you to do two things here. The following exercise is from 1 Corinthians 2, 6 through 10. It's from the Greek text. And what we have here is, this is written in English, and we want you to write it in Greek. So substitute the appropriate Greek letters. You can cut and paste this file, and then put spaces in between it and work it. And I'd like for you to send it to me electronically. All right? Do the same thing with this Greek down here, but put it in English. Transliterate it. Any questions? Try to work on that. Now, we've talked about this, much of this material already. So what we're going to do is go back to our lesson. This will be our first lesson. And we've been through these rules. This is lesson 1. Now what we have here, I just can't get this off the screen for some reason. Yeah, I got it off. Got it far enough off to it won't be in the way. All right. We're going to look at the conjugation of a particular kind of verb, a very common verb. It ends with the letter omega. We'll be looking at the conjugation of these verbs. Now we have the present tense, indicative mood, which is a statement of a fact, active voice, where the subject is doing the action of the verb. And what we have is we have something different in Greek, a couple of things that are significantly different than we have in English. Greek is an inflected language, and so we'll be seeing that in just a moment. Right here we have a Greek sentence, nune, de, mene, pistis, elpis, agape. But now abides faith, hope, love. This is from 1 Corinthians 13:13. Now, we'll be looking at this, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. But what we have here is, this is a sentence, and we're going to look at a verb. We'll be looking at verbs first. Now, he defines what a verb is, and a verb is a word in a sentence which affirms or predicates something. Paul preaches, for example. Preaches is a verb. The boy ran, and so ran is a verb. And so the Greek verb has very full inflection, much different than our English verbs. But most of its forms are represented in some way in the English verb system. So don't think that an English verb is a total, complete substitute for a Greek verb. There's some difference. As in English, the verb forms are divided into finite verbs, those limited by person and number, which define predication. And the infinitive and verbal forms, those which are not limited to a person or number, the infinitive. To preach and the participle preaching. So these are infinite. Now what we mean by finite, it is either first or second or third person or singular or plural. So it is not a reference to everybody, and could be not a reference to everybody. First person would be the one speaking, the second person will be the one spoken to, and so forth. So that's a finite verb. An infinite verb, an infinitive, can take any person and any number. And so that's your infinitive. It's infinite. You can take any. And a participle takes on the nature of both verbs and adjectives. It takes both on and acts like an adverb sometimes. So our verbs are basically two basic kinds. There is the omega verb, which is the first one we'll be introducing, and then there'll be later we'll have what's called the me verbs. The most numerous of this type, it ends in omega in the first person present tense singular number indicative mood. These are called omega verbs. Now, the other type ends in me, and this would be the mu, iota right here, and are called me verbs. And mu, iota is pronounced as me. Omega verbs are later, but have practically displaced the other type, so they're much more frequent, so we'll cover them first. Now, they start off with a simple verb and use it as a pattern or a form to show how we inflect these verbs. And they take a very simple three-letter verb, luo. Now what this is, it's three letters here, luo, and the first two letters are the stem. We'll get to this later. We'll cover this later. He doesn't talk about it very much in this book. He does a bit, but we'll be introducing it from other sources, be supplementing. And the last letter is going to designate something else for us. So we have a verb, a stem, and an ending, an inflected ending. And so the verb of the type luo is described and located as present indicative, active voice, first person, singular in number, singular in number. This means the verb is in the present tense. We'll see what that means. It's not exactly the same as the English present tense. The indicative mood is pretty much the same as an English indicative mood. The active voice is pretty much the same as an English active voice. The first person and singular number are basically the same as in English. So we must understand what these mean before we can proceed. They mean nearly the same thing in English. Tense is, in English, is time. It's present tense, future tense, and so forth. Whereas in Greek, time is only secondary. And time is only found in the indicative mood with verbs. And so what we have here is, it is the kind of action. Now, present tense is an action that is ongoing. It's continuous action. And the action is continuous or stated as a point. And so it will be stated, in this case, as continuous. Present tense denotes action as continuous and ongoing or going on. Any questions? A couple of things about this is the kind of action is linear or durative. It continues for a duration. Only in the indicative mood does the Greek signify time. Your other moods, like imperative moods and so forth, in subjunctive moods, those moods do not indicate time. Time is obtained from the context. In the present indicative, the it is continuous action in the present time. It is a particular kind of action that we're looking at, not necessarily the time frame. Now we have the mood. And just like in English, the mood refers to the manner that the statement is affirmed or claimed. The indicative mood is made as stating a fact. And I can say, this is a computer that I'm touching right now. That's a statement of a fact. That's the indicative mood. I could say, get me that car or get me that pencil, and that would be an imperative mood, a commandment. And so we would have a different mood in English and also in Greek. The mood is used, this mood, the indicative mood, what we'll be looking at first, we'll bring these other moods in much later in our study, can be used in asking questions, such as, did I lose? And we can just use that, did I lose? And And in negatives such as luo, I do not loose. That would be luo. And so we would have here, I don't know where my cursor is, luo. Right across there, I do not loose. The other moods make their statements less positively. If I lose, that would be subjunctive, or imperative, you lose, as commandment for someone. You don't know whether they'll do it or not. We do have another mood called the optative mood. It's a wish, but he doesn't introduce that here. It's not found very often in the New Testament. The voice tells how the verb is related to the subject. The active voice tells the subject I, the subject I does the acting. The passive voice would mean I am loosed. And so what we have here is, if it's passive voice, it's being done to me. Active voice, the subject is doing it. Now the Greek has another voice which we'll introduce later called the middle voice. We'll not worry about it at this time. Now, the person, of course, is first, second, third person. The first is the speaker, and that is I, or it could be we if it's plural. And then you would be, it would be singular or plural in English, but the Greek has plural forms and singular forms for those pronouns. That'd be second person. And then he, she, or it would be your third person, or it could be plural, they or those or them. The number would be singular and plural. Those would be your two numbers. The older Greek had a dual number, but it did not survive in the New Testament. There are a couple of words that seem to have a dual thrust in the New Testament, but that's even questioned. The Hebrew language does have a dual number, which would be two things that occur in pairs, like hands and feet and eyes and so forth. Any questions? But we're not studying Hebrew here. The verb is conjugated, which means it's inflected to tell you what number it is and also what person it is. Inflections or forms are exhibited to show differences in tense, mood, voice, person, and number. All of these things, the inflections, will tell you what there are. And so the following section gives a conjugation of luo. It's the word we'll be using over and over. That means I loose. This word here, my cursor is I loose. L-O-O-S-E. And it's the present indicative active, and that's the form, first person singular. Now here's your basic form. We have our stem, lu, the first two letters, and then the omega at the end is first person singular. It's for the verb, and it means it is actually a pronoun. So Greek verbs, unlike English verbs, have a pronoun attached to the end of the verb. And this would be literally loose I, but we would translate it I loose, or I am loosing, or I do loose. But the omega is I. Now, we take the stem here, lu, and this basic stem, and then we take ace, and this will be epsilon iota sigma, the last three letters, luace, luace, and that is you loose. That's singular you loose, or you are loosing. And then we would take the basic stem and we'd add epsilon iota. That would be third person singular. He, she, or it looses. We'd have to look at the context to see whether it's he, she, or it. Okay. Again, these endings, omega, ace, a, oace, a, then we take lu again. Take this, we go with this, and then we add the omen, omicron, mu, epsilon, nu. Luomen. And the luomen, lu is loose, and omen is we loose. It's the pronoun we loose. It's an old pronoun. It's not separated off as a separate pronoun, however, just attached to the verb. And the next one, that was plural, you. We, I'm sorry, it's first person. Luete. And so we take the basic stem, lu, and then we add ete, epsilon, tau, epsilon, luete. And this is you or you all, good Southern English, you all lose. And so we have here the, get this out of the way. Lu, basic stem, and usi. So this would be luusi. And so our endings would be, the usi ending is third person plural. The ete ending here is, if I can get it out of the way, the ete ending is second person plural. The omen ending is first person plural. All right. The a ending, get my mouse over, right here, epsilon iota, is third person singular. The ace ending, epsilon iota sigma, is ace would be second person singular. And then the omega ending is first person singular. That's the forms for your verbs. And that will be the endings of your omega verbs. Just put these endings on the stem and you have the verb. Now, we don't have that inflection in English. Russian has it, and I've been told some other languages like English, French and German have it, but I haven't studied those languages. I've studied some Hebrew, and it does have inflections also. Now, we also have, along with it, they add the infinitive to it. So what we have here is, I can get it to work. The lu and ain. I finally got it to work. Ain ending is an infinitive ending. So we have the endings for first person, for present indicative active of omega verbs is omega, o, ace, a, omen, ete, usi, and then ain, epsilon iota nu, is the present tense infinitive. And to loose or to be loosing. Any questions? Okay. Now, your basic stem here is lu, as we see down below, which is unchanged throughout all of this, including the infinitive. And a connecting vowel, that connecting vowel will be either an omicron or an epsilon, an omicron before a mu and a nu, which are called thematic vowels, and a set of endings clearly seen in om, min, and te in the plural endings. These are called personal endings. The ete, what is the stem? The stem is lu, of course. Connecting vowel, and then the epsilon is the connecting vowel. And te is the personal ending. So right here, what we have here, here's the basic form of them. Right here, omega, o, ace, a, omen, ete, usi. That includes the connecting vowels. And then ain for your infinitive. O is first person, singular. Ace is second person, singular. A is third person, singular. Omen is first person, plural. Ete is second person, plural. Usi is third person, plural. Any questions? Okay? The accent on verbs is recessive. If the ultima is long, and we've talked about the ultima, the accent falls on the P note. Now, the ultima is the ultimate or the last syllable in the word. The P note is the next to the last syllable, and ante, A-N-T-E, is the one before it. It's the one before the P note. It's the third syllable. Okay? If the ultima is long, it's a long vowel or a diphthong, the accent falls on the P note. Otherwise, it goes to the third syllable from the end. That will be the anti-P note. Are there questions? All right. The English student must make several adjustments in his thinking when it comes to the Greek verb. First, the Greek verb, which is unaccompanied by substantive, that means a noun or a pronoun, carries its own subject. For instance, luete here is you loose. The ete ending is you. You loose. Now, the subject of the verb is expressed in the end of the verb. Any comments? That's different in English. The verb ending agrees with that subject. It always agrees with that subject. Jesus lue. Jesus lue. Jesus is Jesus. Lue is he. OSA, he. Notice here the ending. He looses. Or Jesus looses. We don't put the pronoun Jesus, he looses, but that would be literal. Any questions? So in this case, Jesus Jesus here is the subject, and looses, he looses, is the verb. We have a complete sentence. Jesus looses. By taking the proper ending and adding it to the stem of the verb, any form can be made. For instance, we take the verb ago, which is I lead, and we add to it, we take the omega off, and we make it OA. We make it A. Now, oops, we add the epsilon iota, which epsilon iota back up here is third person singular. And so that means he leads. I lead, I'll go, notice the omega ending. He leads, age. Age. He leads. Any questions? We have the word Lego, and we'd end that with an omega right there. Lego. That would be I speak. Legomen, we'll go back up and see our pattern. Omen is we. It's first person plural. We speak. And if I wanted this to be I speak, it would be Lego. We'd just have an omega in it. If I wanted they speak, it would be Legusi. Put this usi ending on it. Drop the old omen there and add usi, and that'd be they speak. So you have to learn these endings, what they are. You have to learn these endings. Questions? All right, the next one, Christos, Genoske. Christos, Genoske. Notice we have Christos. Christos. 2 syllables. Genoske. 3 syllables. Genoske. So right here, Christos, Christ, the anointed one, he knows. We have the A, epsilon iota ending. That would be he, third person singular. If I wanted to make this I know, of course, we wouldn't have the subject this way. It would just be, sko. We just drop the epsilon iota and put an omega. That would become I know. All right? Okay. Any questions? Now, Greek only has one form for the progressive present. I am lucid. The emphatic present, I do loose, and the regular present, I loose. In other words, the same form could be any one of these three. So it's possible in a given context to translate it in any one of these three ways. So that becomes a little bit of a contextual problem, and we can certainly be wrong in our views of it. Now,
Brother?
yes, question.
What are some ways in the context that it would derive a difference between those three different ideas so that then you would know how to interpret it?
Well, you would have to look at the other verbs in the context and what was being said and what was being done.
Okay.
Context is really a hard subject to study. I've found a book that does a real good job on it. It doesn't thoroughly cover everything, but it's a real good book, and I'll try to remember it and mention it next week. All right, it's a book written by a brother in Christ. Okay, but
Thank you.
to argue context is really tough. We have to look carefully at everything. Now, we could see someone living in a life of service to the Lord. He says he obeys, and so he is obeying. And in the context, you might see that he is continually obeying. See? And it might be that he's obeying at that moment. So again, we have to always. Context is really hard. I'm sorry, I'm not helping you very much. Any questions? Other questions I can't answer. All right. The infinitive, the present active infinitive, is formed by adding the ein ending. That's your ein ending right here, to the stem of the present tense. Its use includes nearly all the similar use of the English infinitive. But the Greek infinitive is very powerful. I, thelo, ego, thelo, graphein. This is read in Greek as ego, thelo, graphein. And graphein is an infinitive. And this is I wish to write. However, let me point out, this ego is a pronoun, ego. And when you use this first person singular form of this pronoun, it's always emphatic. That's what the authorities tell us. So that would be because thelo has its own first person singular ending. So this is I wish to write. That wouldn't be good English, but it's emphatic. So you could say even I write might be to emphasize it. So it is I write, but it's emphatic I. Graphein. Now, I wish to write. I wish to write. The ein ending here, these last three letters, are used to depict the present tense infinitive. And it's an active infinitive. We can have a passive voice infinitive as well. There is also another voice that we don't have in English. It's got some really important information in it. That's called the middle voice, but we'll cover that at a later time. I wish to write. And it's emphatic. And so this is a present tense, a continuous action infinitive. Are there comments or questions there? All right. All of the omega verbs given in the vocabulary are inflected like luo. We have a bunch of omega verbs down here. They're inflected like luo. And what we would like for you to do is to write out the conjugations for grapho and lego. Now, let me point out, all you do is change this ending, the omega, to o, ace, a, omanetiusi. That will be all you do. Just drop this off and put ace, epsilon iota sigma, what the omega is, and that makes it second person. The third singular. Third person would be epsilon iota in place of omega. That would be your third person singular. Just do that all the way through. And take these two verbs. Grapho is I write. Lego is I speak. Now there's several different Greek words for speaking. We have several different English words. We could speak, we could say, and we could babble. And so we could use several different words for uttering things out of the mouth. Babbling, speaking, saying, so forth. And Greek has several. But this Lego is an interesting word. I'll give you a little background on it. Thayer tells us, and other sources tell us, that it means to express your collected thoughts. And so it's to collect your thoughts and speak them. And we have here, that term is used for God's word. God spoke his collected thoughts on the salvation of man, for example. Now we have ago, we've already had that, and that's I lead. And of course, age would be he leads, or she leads, or it leads. Agace, ace, epsilon, iota, sigma, or some omega, that would be you lead, singular. Kuo, notice it's a diphthong, kuo. So you pronounce it kuo. Kuo is I hear. The word acoustic comes from this. And then we have acoustics and acoustical systems and so forth. Balo. It often gets the emphasis. Two syllables, balo, and then of course you break it between the two longnas. Balo. Put the emphasis on the alpha. Balo. And of course our word ballistics and ball and so forth come from this word. But this is a verb. Notice the omega ending. Blepo, and two syllables, blepo. Blepo is I see. There's different words for seeing. We in English can say I see when we mean I see with my eyes, and we can say I see when I understand something. I see with the eye of my mind. And so we have different words in Greek though, whereas English will have the same word. Gnosko. And I know, I realize, I learned, but this is elementary knowledge, not full, deep knowledge. They would add a preposition, epi, the word upon, to it and make it fuller and more thorough knowledge. So, gnosko. The word Gnostic comes from the same basic root as this. Grapho up here. Two syllables, grapho. And this is I write. The word graphics or graph comes from this. Now, what we have is geography, and that's gay, that's earth, and graphy, or writing. It's something written about the earth. That's geography. Now, day is a different. It's not a verb. It's a part of speech that's conjunction. We call it conjunctions. Now, there's different kinds of conjunctions, but we'll get into those at a later time. But day is a conjunction, but it has something that's different than anything like we have in English. It's post-positive. So its position is post or after a word that is translated and found before it in the sentence. But it goes back and actually in thought precedes that word. Now, I think we may have one up here. I can't remember. Let me see. I'll look. Oh, yeah, we do right here. Today is now, and day is but. But day goes before it in thought. So it's postpositive. Now, I haven't found any sources that agree with me on this, but I suspect these postpositive words were there to tell you where the sentence begins, because the Greek didn't have spaces between sentences, didn't have periods like we have. And so it might have been for that purpose. And so it'll never begin a sentence. It'll be the second, third, fourth, fifth, even the sixth word in the sentence. It'll be way down here. But it never begins a sentence. So the sentence begins here, and this word but goes before it. It's a conjunction. So it's a nunate day, now but we translate it but now. And this is a verb. Notice the epsilon iota ending. This is from minnow. And OSA, this is third person singular. And these, of course, are nouns. Faith, hope, and love. Okay. Questions? Words that are postpositive. Now, in this vocabulary, this little brief vocabulary, these words that are postpositive will be listed as postpositive. They're post, which means after, positive, or position. Position is after. Must go second in the clause, but that's not entirely true. It could go third, fourth, fifth, or even sixth in the clause. Usually it's second or third, though, most of the time. Are there questions or comments? Now, what we have here is we have some words that are found many, many times in the New Testament. So he's introduced these words that are found quite frequently, not rare. They're not rare. Ego is a pronoun. And our English word ego probably comes from this word. The best I can tell from my research, it comes from this word, ego. And so if a man has an ego, he's a big I. He thinks he's it. And so that's ego. Notice the accent is on the omega. But that omega is not a verb. It's not a verb ending. And you can tell that because the omega won't have, it has the accent mark, but this is a pronoun. So there are some words that can end in omega and won't be a verb. Kind of keeps that in the back of your mind. Hue. Now this right here has a rough breathing over it. This is a diphthong, epsilon U, like in feud, risco. Hue, but an H sound, a hue, risco. And you can listen to this and try to repeat these words yourself and listen to them on the internet. Okay. I find. And our word eureka, English word eureka, I have found it.
Brother Fox? Do you have a good resource for looking up the conjugations?
Yes, there's some books that you can get that will have them. And these are called Analytical Lexicons. And you can order them on the internet and find them. I have two of them. And I have a Baxter, which was done by Moulton. And then I have another one that was done by another source. These, what they do is they kind of let you cheat. You can look the word up, and it's in alphabetical order. They'll tell you, it'll conjugate it for you. They're called Analytical Lexicons.
Okay.
There's one UNCE.
In
You could get this and okay. Christian book distributors. And you can get from them, and they have pretty good prices on this stuff.
Is that something I should probably invest in for the class?
I think it would be helpful for all of you. It's a cheater a bit, but try to do it without that, and then use it as backup. That's what I would suggest. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Echo here is, I remember that as I think of it, my memory hook is this one, this word here is a verb, echo, I have or get or hope. I think I get an echo back on an echo chamber, I have it back. It's kind of my way of remembering it. We have here, of course, we just changed that ending to make all the different inflections. Thello is also, I wish, I'm willing, I'm delighted in something. There's another word, it's an omai verb, it's a different kind of verb, but anthello and bulomai are synonyms, but they have a subtle difference in their meaning, and they're used together sometimes. It really helps in interpreting the passage, but we'll get to those later, not right now. Jesus, this is a noun, a name of a person. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus. That's Jesus. Kai. This word is found a couple thousand times in the New Testament, probably. I'd have to look it up, but many, many, many times. It's you won't find a page in the New Testament that doesn't have this word on it, I don't think. I would dare say you won't find 2 pages in a row that don't have it. You may find a page or 2 around, but they'll be real rare. This is the word and, it's a conjunction, and it always takes things that are equal. Believe and be baptized, kai, and, whether they're both on equal terms. Can be also translated also and even. So that's kai, it's a very important word. Lambano, 3 syllables, lambano. I take or receive. Now, this is in the active voice. My view and my understanding, and of course I could be wrong on this, but my view is when it's in the active voice, it should be translated I take. When it's in the passive voice, it should be translated I receive. That's my claim. And that's very important when you come to that word. It's found many times. We've also had luo already, and we'll come back and finish this next week, the Lord willing. Any questions or comments? Okay.
One quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
To hear is akuo.
Yes, I hear. Akuo is I hear.
In the third person plural, would that be akusi or akuusi?
Akusi.
Akusi.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to stop recording now. Any other questions?